Do you think some Europeans are undervalued in their draft year because they aren't playing pro? Yes. 10 points in 60 games in the CHL gets you drafted. Yeah, that's half the reason I'm doing what I do. This is why I believe I'm not working in the NHL right now. There's probably many reasons, but a big reason is because the way I do things is just from a fundamental standpoint, significantly different from almost every team in the league, if not all of them. It's a foreign language, right? But the reason I do it this way is because I'm trying to cut out as much bias as I possibly can. I've said this before, I think, on the show. Feel free to get your licks in, but I am an avid user of large language models. And a big thing I did this summer that took a few days of like refining and working and whatever is basically leaving my viewpoints out of it and using like psychological principles, like science papers and scientific principles of building a framework of how this job should work. I wish I was joking. Maybe it's confirmation bias, but I went out of my way in my prompts to say, please exclude if I sound biased, go the opposite direction. Challenge my bias if I come off as that. And I want your analysis to be based in academic research, not Reddit discussions, not my video transcripts. I want academic discussion. It was basically around the like psychology of groups and like the psychology of athlete development. What came out the other end is exactly what I expected. Scouting staffs are full of biases. And the biggest one is that there are too many voices for small groups, and there are too many voices to stay organized in all those subgroups. And what I mean by that is like you might have 8 scouts in Canada and 5 scouts in America, 3 scouts in Europe. What does that sound like to you? If you have a bunch of guys whose job it is just to go around, go to rinks in Ontario, they're gonna have Ontario guys that they're gonna want to get behind. So how do you have the discussion of this Ontario kid that this guy wants? Probably not a better bet than this Finnish guy that our Finnish guy really likes. There's no other Finnish guy to back him up. The Swedish guy might go, well, I saw him at a tournament. I thought he was fine. But then you might have the other Ontario guys go, oh yeah, I've seen this guy 7 times as well, and I really like him. It creates a fundamental imbalance. The way that it kind of broke out, I said, like design using psychological principles, academic science, like start from scratch, build an NHL scouting department using technology to its fullest extent. And it outlined bang on exactly what I would do between 4 and 8. And all they do is just grind video. They grind and grind and grind all around the world. Does not matter where the player plays. You gather extensive information as much as you possibly can globally through video. And they are a group, 4 to 8 people. And I think that is enough. I would not want more than 7 or 6 probably. And I'm thinking clones of me. I think once you get past that, biases start to creep in. And that is true scientifically speaking, like beyond 8 or so. And think about it. Imagine you had to work on a group project in school and there was 20 of you. The big thing the paper pointed out that it made for me was like in groups that large, you have people who are afraid to speak up because they're going to get drowned out by the 19 other people in the room. And you also have people who do less work because they figure that everyone else is going to do the work for them. And I'm not saying that's what happens in scouting in the NHL, but like those are the biases you open yourself up to in groups that large. On the flip side of that analysis that it did, it also said you need a person in Canada, a person in the US, a person in Europe to do your intelligence gathering. Their day-to-day, it's not they're at the rink every night. You know, they travel by day to interview coaches. They do Zoom interviews with players. They pick up information. That's their job. They're scouting the person, not the player. It's a bonus if they can see a game of one of them playing and like get a vibe for that too. That'd be great. Like the point would be grinding all day to do as many interviews and get as much information as you possibly can about as many players as you can. And then you combine all those things. So you have a group of people who are responsible for like the intelligence gathering and a group of people responsible for the information gathering. And so you combine those things and you come out with targets. You go, okay, this guy meets our expectations on this side. This guy meets our expectations on this side. This guy, and then you go from there. I know there's a couple of NHL teams who are kind of like dipping toes in that a little bit, but by and large, that's not how it works. I mean, look, I am just a guy I'm not saying that I have the solutions, but it is something that I look into. And like another thing that it highlighted in terms of like biases is looking at potential development physically, right? How can you tell? Because I don't have access to do all the measurements and the tests that the NHL wants to do on these guys to project their future. I can't call up Lane Hutson's doctor and go, hey, can you give me a bone growth chart for Lane Hutson to tell me how big he's going to be when he's 20? So what are the external factors that you can look at and evaluating in the context of an NHL draft to figure out who is going to do what? One of the biggest things that it said was judging a book by its cover. If you have a 17-year-old with a bushy beard and they're 6'5", you're probably not going to get much more development out of them from there. But if you have a 17-year-old who looks like a 6-year-old and is 5'9", their parents are 6'2", you're probably going to end up with a kid who's going to grow more. It's a probability thing, but that's the general gist of it. But it seems like in the NHL, the opposite is true. If you don't look like a physically developed person, if you don't look like an NHLer, then you're devalued. Lane Hutson, almost a 3rd-round pick. He looked like a 2-year-old on the ice. So if anything, you need to flip that around. In general, that is kind of that's kind of where I come from.